Indictments. I've been indicted many times. I've been indicted 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. It's okay. I'm the best. No one gets indicted better than me. Okay. Let me tell you, no one takes an indictment like I do. Okay. Frank Janish, if they call him Frankie Numbers, but you got the numbers wrong on this one, pal. Okay, I'm gonna walk away scot free. Scot free, not Frank. Can I be Frank? I know you're Frank, but let me be Frank for a second. I'm gonna walk away scot free. Okay. Let me tell you.
Is it ridiculous how easy you just fall into like the absurdness? It's like it just naturally, like once you get in that mode, it seems like you just fall into saying dumb shit, just like dumb nonsensical crap.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Scoundrels Inc., another Star Wars podcast. I am Frank Janish here with Brandon Hanna, and look, we're continuing our series on essential Ahsoka episodes. We've done for the past couple of weeks. We've touched on a handful of episodes in Clone Wars. We touched on some episodes last week with Rebels, Old Friends Not Forgotten, or that's Clone Wars, sorry. Old Friends Not Forgotten, Victory and Death, wrapping up the Clone Wars series. And now this week, we're getting into some Rebels episodes. We're talking about Old Friends Not Forgotten, which I just said that a second ago. I'm reading the wrong line on my notes here. It's I was like Ron Burgundy. Could you imagine just just reading off the teleprompter? We're talking about Season 2, Episode 22, Twilight of the Apprentice Part 2. You all know it. You all love it. It's a great episode. And then Season 4, Episode 13, A World Between Worlds. And I gotta say, this was a great double feature episodes, if you will, Brandon, because I think they go pretty well back to back, and we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. But if you're new to the channel, if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, if you like what we do over here, and hit that like button as well, and leave a comment on this video, and I'll tell you why, if you're not familiar, why, on the other side of the logo. So punch it, Brando. So, why should you leave a comment on this video? Well, for the past couple of weeks, if you're not familiar, we've been doing sort of a giveaway contest of sorts, where if you leave a comment on our video, that gives you one entry into our giveaway. And what's the giveaway? It's an Ahsoka Rebels figurine, or Mandalorian figurine of the Black Series. I was thinking of the Black Series Rebels that... I think it was a podcast, Black Series Rebels. I was thinking of that, and I was getting all mixed up. But Ahsoka does have a Rebels version of a character in the Black Series, and then there's also a Mandalorian version, which I have the Mandalorian one. I don't have the Rebels Ahsoka figure, but I think I'm going to get that pretty soon. But either way, if you leave a comment on this video, you get one entry into that giveaway. If you reply to someone's comment, then it's 2 entries. And if you send us an email at our email address, which you can find in the description, you can get 5 points, 5 additional entries into the giveaway. Just a one-time deal. And all you have to do in that email is tell us your story about how you found Star Wars. And then later on, we'll do a whole episode where we're going to talk about the emails that we got. We've gotten a couple of emails, Brandon, believe it or not. You know,
yeah?
People want to win this figure.
You've been getting my emails, Frank?
I have been getting your emails.
How many points am I up to?
You actually, because of the amount you've entered in, you are at negative 72, which is weird because you can only do multiples of 5. I don't know why, Anyways, we'll have our accountant look at that. So that's our giveaway, and we only have a couple more weeks for that because the Ahsoka series, which comes out on August 23rd, is coming up pretty quick here at the end of the month, Brandon.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Excited for it?
I don't even know what day it is, but I am excited.
It's the 23rd, I just said. 23rd. It's a 2-episode premiere, by the way. 2-episode premiere. So that's at least an hour's worth of Ahsoka series content. Okay, so there was something I wanted to ask you before we get into everything, Brandon, because we are going to talk about the SAG-AFTRA WGA strike, as we fully support that strike. But before we talk about that, I want to ask you, Brandon, did you complete the Barbenheimer achievement?
If that means seeing both movies, then yes.
Okay, okay. And how did you like them?
Not enough Star Wars in it, I think.
Okay.
But I enjoyed them both very much. I think both were expertly written and acted. So the people involved should get lots and lots of money.
Yeah, they really should. I did see. Did you see them both on the same day, or did you spread it
No,
apart?
it was like a few days apart. It was like
Okay.
Thursday and then Sunday.
Which one did you
Yeah,
see first? Barbie.
Barbie.
You're at Barbie. Oh, yeah, yeah. I went and saw it the Monday after Comic Con,
Hmm.
and it was Oppenheimer first. Saw it in IMAX, and then I saw Barbie. Saw that in Dolby, and that was a really great experience. I thought it was a great double feature. Honestly, it's a fun double feature, and I really loved Oppenheimer. It's 3 hours, but it goes by really really quick. At least it did for me. And Barbie, was a great time as
Hmm.
well. I thought Barbie was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was really well written. Some pretty profound moments, impactful moments in that movie. Um, Barbie, that is. Also, Oppenheimer, though, man, Christopher Nolan, that dude can make a movie. And then on Twitter earlier today, I just had to sing my praises about Ludwig Göransson. Also, has done Mandalorian.
Hmm.
His score for Oppenheimer is phenomenal. It is phenomenal. And apparently, Maddie Gunner replied to my tweet and said that Ludwig did it in 5 days. That's insane to
What?
do. Yeah, I'm like I didn't really look too much further into it. I'm gonna have to see kind
Hmm.
of what that what that did they record it in 5 days? Did he write it in 5 days? Did he do it all completely? I don't know. Um, but
Just did it
it's
all off the cuff.
right. Like
Had a
he just
keyboard
had
in
to
front
like
of him.
he's like, Chris, I got something for you in the back. Like I've been saving this for a rainy day. Poof, here you go. I don't know. It's insane because it is a phenomenal score to go along with a pretty phenomenal movie. It might be up there for my favorite of the year because I really do love Spider
Hmm.
Verse. Um, I don't know. Do you think any of these movies crack your top two, top three favorite of the year, or you're not sure?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, both of them. Honestly, I thought Barbie was really well made. I was laughing the whole time, but it also has like a lot of really good like social commentary and important messages and all that stuff that was handled. I thought really well. And if you think it's anti men, you're a fool. You're a fool, my apprentice. You're a fool, but that's okay because I will train you in the ways of the Force. That's my Maul impression. We'll get to that later.
Okay.
But my apprentice. I love when he says that. Um, yeah, and Oppenheimer. I love science history. I thought again that was handled as well as it could have been, given the subject matter and the history of World War II and
Yeah.
of course, atomic bombs and weapons of mass destruction and their devastation is all very horrible. But um, I thought that the message of the film was very much anti weapons of mass destruction and the weight and the gravity of everything that goes behind it. And yeah, like I said, I find just the history of science and scientists very fascinating because I'm a science guy,
Yeah.
as you might say. So yeah,
You might say you're on science. You might say
you might
Brandon
say
on science. You might say
you might say that I am Brandon and I am on the science,
yeah. Um,
and you are Frankie J. 9.
29. Yeah, 29.
Nailed it. Give me a second.
Yeah. You know what I will say is real quickly about Oppenheimer. You don't typically think of scientists so much involved with like politics, if you will, that
Hmm.
kind of like Oppenheimer was dealing with in terms of how he was trying to influence policy in terms of how to
Yeah.
use these types of weapons. So I thought that was I wasn't really expecting that from the movie. I thought, oh, this guy, the story about Los Alamos and how they made the bomb. But then it kind of goes into a little bit more after that, and like the repercussions and his feelings towards the U.S. and the policies in terms of how do you handle and implement weapons of mass destruction and things like that. So yeah, it was a great aspect of the movie as well. Before we get into our discussions with the Ahsoka episodes we're discussing today on the show, I want to talk a little bit more about SAG-AFTRA strike, WGA strike, because while we are still talking and covering Star Wars, we're still very much supportive of the strike and what they're fighting for. And so I came across a couple of videos over the past week that I want to pass along to the audience and perhaps yourself, Brandon, if you haven't seen them. One of the videos I watched, which I thought was really informative and as well as entertaining, was Christian Harloff on his channel. He had a video with Dan Murrell, Roxy Stryer, and Kate Mulligan, and all given like their perspectives on the strike and kind of a little more nuance to the conversation than I've heard elsewhere. And I found it really, really informative, especially from Dan, who's not in the union, but he's a reviewer and how it impacts his work. Obviously, Roxy is an actress who has a movie that's kind of in limbo because of the strike right now in terms of its release, or a wide release, I guess I should say, on streaming platforms and whatnot. And then Kate Mulligan, she's also been in movies, but her husband is a writer, and he's a guild captain for the WGA, so she has a whole perspective on it. And I thought it was just really, really, really interesting about the things that they were talking about the strike and how it impacts and what they like about the strike or how it's being handled. So I thought it was a really, really great conversation all of them had. Kate did bring up one thing that I wasn't aware of because I'm not too caught up on the history of these strikes and what they were always fighting for. But one thing she did say, and I don't want to completely misrepresent it or misinform, so please go watch the video and hear what she had to say. But she said something to the effect that, I don't know if it was the last strike in 2007 or whatever it was, something was going on with like the agents and the writers, and eventually they did something where basically they just started negotiating with the studios separately outside of the MPTP. So like they could come to terms with like Paramount, but then like still couldn't do work for WB or whatever. And so Kate was kind of saying, I wonder if it gets so dragged out for so long that one studio just might be like, look, we got to get stuff being made. We can't all come to consensus right now, but we're willing to make a deal on with you, just the one studio with the writers or the actors or what have you, which I really thought was really interesting because I did see another article actually like a couple days ago about how the AMPTP is they're not completely unified in what they want to do because they're not a union per se, and so they're like, we got to try and figure out how to go back to the table with terms that we're all on board with. And so like they're also, I think, having some internal strife with each other, which is, go figure. But then another video I saw, which I thought was really really informative as well. And it was Pod Save America, Jon Favreau, not the director, but the former Obama writer. He was talking with Adam Conover, and he had a whole thing on what's been happening with the strike and kind of like the histories behind it and what they're fighting for, and another great, informative, entertaining video. So those are two. I want to link those both in the description. So if you're looking for more information and like history, if you will, on strikes and how that's been happening in the industry, I do recommend these two videos. I found them very informative and entertaining. So I don't know, Brandon, if you have anything else on your mind.
Yeah, no. Yeah, obviously, it's a big thing in the world of film and television, and we've been talking about it on this show, and of course, fully in support of the strikes. And what you were saying about maybe like one studio works out a deal. We've already seen that like with A24.
Yeah.
Guild members are of SAG are free to work with A24 if if they want to. Uh, yeah, I heard somewhere else, I can't remember where, that is what tends to happen, is like once one of like the big studios um meets the guild's terms, then like all the other ones will eventually like start to like dominoes,
Yeah.
basically. Not the pizza place, but hey, if they want to give free pizza to the strikers, that would be a really good PR move, just saying. And gluten free too, because there's people out there that are allergic to gluten, even though
Yeah.
there
Gluten
is
free
cross
people are people
contamination.
too.
There is cross contamination at Domino's, so you got to be careful. They give you that warning on the app. But anyways, um, yeah. So I mean that would be ideal, because obviously, like, if one studio, let's say like Paramount, like agrees to the guild's conditions, and they're free to start working, then now they have like an competitive advantage over like the other studios.
Right.
They can start making movies and stuff. So we'll just have to wait and see. And I think it could be a while, but everyone seems, except for Stephen Amell, they seem to be for the
Jeez,
cause.
like, come on, bro. Like,
So
anyways.
um
And did you
yeah.
hear? Did you hear what he also said? His follow. He's like, yeah, I kind of wish those my comments weren't made public. I'm like, everyone was like, dude, you were at a convention,
That's
a
not an
public setting
apology.
with like microphones and cameras all over the place. What the hell are you
Yeah.
talking about, bro? So
Mhm.
no, yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah. I
yeah.
don't know. I
Well,
kind of lost some respect for Stephen Amell with those
yeah. I
comments.
didn't. Yeah. Anyway, I never watched Arrow, and
Um,
I'm glad I did it now. So there you
yeah,
go.
he's like, "Oh, I support the union, but I don't support striking." And I'm just like, he's like, he basically was like something like, "Oh, there's better ways to,
Yeah.
reach an agreement." And I'm like, Well, they tried all those other ways, Stephen. That's
Yeah,
why we're here."
exactly. Yeah, exactly. This is like
Every
the last
single
resort. Yeah.
Yeah, every single worker in America has rights because unions went on strike. So,
That's right. I also did see a quote from Fran recently saying
mhm.
they're financially ready to go for like 6 months if need be. So, and they just
Yeah,
got a bunch
and
of like $1 million donations from a lot of big
mhm.
time actors. Ben Affleck and his wife, and J Lo.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said that way because I
You
meant to
mean
say
J
Matt
Lo and her
Damon.
husband?
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. What I meant to say was Matt Damon and his wife. I forget her name. That's why I said and his wife. And then, but
Mm,
Matt and Ben obviously go together. And last couple episodes, I talked about their own production company, Actors Equity, which is a really great thing. But also, other big name actors. I think Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, they donated a lot of money. Oprah, and so
mhm.
that was really cool to see that they're pitching in
Yeah.
like for the fund, the entertainers
Mhm.
entertainment fund. I think it's called something like that. Again, a link will be in the description if you're so inclined to support in that way.
Yeah, that's why
Yeah,
Batman's better than the Green Arrow.
that's right. Exactly. It's like, oh yeah, Stephen Amell, I just laid down a mill. So what do you got, homie?
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's gonna steal a mill. I
He's
don't
gonna
know.
be right.
Stephen
Um,
Amell's gonna
all
steal
right.
a mill. There's something there. There's something
Yeah, I thought so too, but I was like, I can't. I'm not gonna waste the brain cells on that one.
there.
But
Yeah.
you know what? Let's talk about some of the best that Rebels has to offer in terms of Twilight of the Apprentice Part Two. Now, I did watch Part One, but
Mhm.
Part Two is really where it's at, and Part One's a nice setup for Part Two. And Brandon, now you're notorious for not watching a lot of Rebels, if any. You started a little bit, but
Mhm.
then life happens. Had you seen this episode before?
I've seen a couple clips here and there
Yeah,
on YouTube.
on the
That's
YouTubes.
about it.
Yeah. So did you watch part one or just do part two?
I just watched part two. That
Okay,
was the homework assignment,
that
right?
was the homework, and that's completely fair.
If it's not
Um,
assigned work, I'm not gonna do it. Just like in
uh,
school.
but if you had watched part one, you would have seen Ezra pick up a crossguard saber, so that was pretty cool. Um, uh, but part two, pretty much we're with Maul now, and Well, Brandon, give me your first impressions, of like Maul and whatnot with Ezra.
First impressions. Let's see.
Like, were you
So
curious
interest.
about what this relationship was gonna be like?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and also like it's like that same like annoying Ezra from like season one where he's like, "Oh, I kind of know more than you. You need to trust me." And it's like, bro, he was like literally a Sith Lord. Like, what are you doing? He
Yeah.
has a red lightsaber. He's got horns coming out of the top of his head. Like maybe don't trust the guy. Um, that's just my opinion. I will say, I, th- I still think the helicopter lightsabers are super silly. Like, and it's even like no offense to like all the people involved, but it's even like I feel like it's the way it's like shown. They just kind of like very like I know it's a cartoon, but they're like really cartoonish. Where they're like, gotta go.
It's true. Yeah, you're not wrong.
And I'm like, what is this? I'm like, it feels like it belongs in a different show. I don't know.
But
It's
you
kind
kind
of
of
silly.
don't you kind of want to see it in the Ahsoka series? Don't you kind of want to see it a little bit?
Like
See
if
what
they
it looked
could
like in
make
live
it,
action, like with
if
just
they could
once.
make it cool. I don't
Yeah,
know if I understand the physics of it. Like,
here he is with his science again.
it doesn't. It's not shaped like a propeller. I don't know. Can like a plasma sword even like generate thrust? I don't know, man.
Are you
Complicated
imposing
physics.
our physics on Star Wars universe? Is that what you're doing? And
I
not take into
guess.
account that perhaps they have different physics in Star
And
Wars?
so, like, listen, I once did a video on the YouTubes where I talked about the penguin's umbrella that turns into a helicopter and he flies away in Batman Returns. And I determined you would need three like small lawnmowers, like the ones that you push, not the ones that you ride on, but the
Yeah,
ones that you push. You would need the equivalent of three push lawnmowers to generate enough power for that like helicopter to like lift him up.
sure.
So that means like all of that power plus the power to ignite two lightsaber blades is in those lightsabers. Like,
I
do they
mean,
have like Tony Stark technology? Like, what's going on, man?
okay, okay. But
Do they
you're
ever have to
cool with Tony
recharge their
Stark.
batteries?
You're cool with Tony Stark tech, but lightsabers, blades, and helicopter. That's where you draw the line.
I did not see any of those people build that in a cave. So, with a box
Okay,
of
well,
scraps.
yeah, right, yeah, yeah. Um, you know what was interesting too, though, about Ezra and Maul is when they meet back up with Kanan and Ahsoka, and Kanan's like,
Hmm.
he's using you, don't fall for it, blah blah blah, and Ezra's like, no, it's okay, it's really okay, you don't understand, he's on our side,
Hmm.
and Ahsoka says something to Kanan that I just thought was very like more on the very zen, very on the wise side of it. It's like
Hmm.
you trained him, you trust him, and even though Kanan was absolutely correct, I think what Ahsoka is telling Kanan there is that you have to let him find out, but trust that he will still be able to recognize it when he needs to, and because it's not necessarily like a bad thing to
Hmm.
befriend someone you don't even know. Like that was like inherently a good. That's a nice thing to do. We as the audience, we know that he should not be doing that because we know Maul, we know his history, we know what he's about. But Ezra has absolutely no
Hmm.
conception of who he is. He doesn't know him at all, right? He's never even heard of the guy. And so for him to befriend someone who's been stranded on this planet makes total sense for Ezra's character, A. And B, it's interesting because Kanan does have to come to, I guess, terms with that. He's got to trust Ezra. And that's kind of like a running thing throughout Rebels. Their whole
Hmm.
Kanan and Ezra. It's about always trying to trust and believe in one another and all that. But Ahsoka is kind of this elder statesman, if you will, to Kanan, and saying you gotta trust in your training and trust in your training for Ezra and trust in Ezra. So to me, I think that that's just another aspect of Ahsoka in terms of believe in yourself that what you've trained to do. Believe that you did a good job. Don't
Mhm.
because by doubting Ezra, Kanan's almost doubting himself and his abilities, which he does have problems with at times when he's training Ezra. He doesn't know if he can train Ezra. He's gone through that stuff, and I think he still deals with that and at various points throughout the series. So with Ahsoka coming in, being like telling Ezra or telling Kanan to trust in Ezra is like telling Kanan to trust in himself. And but I wanted to get to, but this episode was really great because, there's aside from the whole Maul, Kanan, Ezra thing going on there, my apprentice, just coming in and swooping in and taking Ezra away from Kanan, which didn't happen, obviously, or did it? No, it didn't. Or did it? I don't know. Did it? I don't know. Brain hasn't seen the rest of it, so I can't spoil it. But I feel like I kind of did, but I also kind of didn't. But now I don't know what he thinks he knows about what I know that he should know that he just doesn't know. Who knows?
I did want to say that I thought it was like kind of like almost like a nice callback when like Ahsoka says basically to Kanan, like you mentioned, to trust Ezra because you trained him. It's very much the same thing that Plo Koon says to Anakin when Ahsoka gets taken. He's like, hey, if you trained her right, like she'll
She'll
be
come
okay.
back. Yeah, she'll
Yeah.
make it back. Yeah, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
correct. And that's Brandon. I'm glad you did the homework. I'm glad you. That's great. I didn't even think of that. That's great. So we get to basically Maul and Ezra, they activate the I think it's what they call it. It's like a station, right? So,
It's something.
And in comes Vader, just badass on top of his TIE fighter, coming down, cloak in the wind. I mean, cape in the wind. It's great. And this is huge because now Ahsoka is coming face to face with Vader, and coming to terms with the fact that Anakin is gone now. Anakin is gone. It's kind of, it's preceding Vader's encounter with Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan series. This takes place before that.
Does it really?
Yes, this takes place before. Wait, right?
No, I think the Obi-Wan series takes place before this. Pretty sure. Unless there's like some big time gap, like in the next season. I don't know.
No, you are absolutely correct because the Grand Inquisitor by this time is already dead. So that's right, because and he's alive in Obi-Wan, obviously, but in Rebels he at this point he's dead. Yes, you're absolutely correct. But I guess when it came out, this came out before Obi-Wan. So that's where I get a little okay. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so I guess now looking back on it, it's interesting to see, Anakin has had this, or Vader rather, has had this fight with Obi-Wan already. He busted up his helmet. Ahsoka does the same thing, and then you get the line, "I am no Jedi." I mean, I'm sure you've seen that clip, yeah.
Yeah, she should have said, "I am a citizen."
And then just you hear the voice, the forced voice of Mace Windu, like, "That's right, little one. That's right. That's right.
Goddamn right."
Yeah, I mean, it was. I don't know, because watching the Clone Wars, I don't think anyone really ever expected Ahsoka to come face to face with Vader like that. I don't know. So like, it's a very bittersweet, because it's like, yeah, they're reunited, but man, it sucks that it's Vader though, and it's and you feel for Ahsoka because she left Anakin at the Order, right? Jedi Order, when she left, right? She left the Jedi Order, she left Anakin, and then she comes back a little bit to do the Siege of Mandalore thing, and hopefully they would reunite and talk about it all later on, right? And now the later on, unfortunately, is meeting here on Malachor, and it's she says I'm not gonna leave you again, and it's just like Ahsoka, I feel like, trying to make up for the fact that she did leave, and she's not gonna make that, I guess, mistake again, because maybe she feels like if she never left the Jedi Order, that perhaps she could have saved Anakin, or helped him in some way, which I do wonder if that's something we could see in the Ahsoka series, where she kind of wrestles with the fact of, if I had just done this, would things be different? Because we'll get into the next episode, World Between Worlds, and I think that could also play into Ahsoka and what it means for her relationship and past events pertaining to Anakin. But what did you think of this fight and kind of like the dialogue back and forth between Ahsoka and Vader?
Yeah, no, it was great. Like Ahsoka did that thing where she like pulls the two lightsabers like that. I don't know how she does that. That was pretty cool. But I liked also his interaction with Ezra, where he's like, "Then you will die braver than most."
Yeah, great line.
Yeah. And then he kind of like says, "You will die" to Ahsoka again later on, where she's like, "I'm not going to leave you." But yeah, no, it was cool to like have that interaction. I guess I like going into this episode, I thought this was like when she like finds out for the first time that it's Anakin, but she said something before, like where she like kind of already knew.
Yeah, there was another episode. I could be making this up, but I feel like I did watch this, where she's like on the ship and she can sense him, and I think she. Oh no, yeah, because they're on a ship. Oh, was this? I forget when this was, but maybe someone in the comments can let us know. But she senses. Oh, that's right, because I think Vader is like shows up in his TIE fighter. And he's like taking out everybody, and like everyone's on the Ghost, and she senses Vader, and Vader senses her back, and that's when she comes to like it's Anakin, and she kind of like passes out. And so like that happened. I don't know if that was the end of season 1 or somewhere, or beginning of season 2. I forget. I don't know. But yeah, she like at that moment, figured out that was Anakin, and so that's when she meets him on Malachor. I also even love the way that Maul is like, dude, Vader's on the way. We gotta giddy up because this dude is lethal.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't believe they had Maul and Vader in the same place at the same time and they didn't fight.
We were this close, Brandon. We were this close. I was thinking about that too. I'm like, I can't believe they put them this close together and they never even met. The restraint on their part to like not do that is incredible, because it would have been so easy. But also at the same time, you're just like, I don't know if that would really make sense just for Vader's story, I guess, in a way, for him to have fought Maul, because he would have to kill Maul then, and it's like that wasn't Maul's time to go. Obviously, he has a much larger arc to complete, culminating with Obi-Wan. And
what's interesting is, sorry, this came out like before the final season of Clone Wars, right? So like to like retroactively look at those scenes and see like Ahsoka next to Maul, knowing that they like fought each other already on Mandalore and they survived Order 66 together and all that.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. Yeah, I did. I thought it was really cool how I saw someone. I think I saw Alex and Molly talking about this too on their season 2 recap video. How basically, the dialogue that they have in this episode between Maul and Ahsoka, somewhere Filoni was thinking, one day I can make Siege of Mandalore, and this will all like. He had that somewhere that story was going to be told, so he knew that they could have this type of interaction. And yeah, it's really cool now that gap has been filled in with the final season of Clone Wars, the Siege of Mandalore, and then it's very cool to see them. We were with them when they last saw each other. Now we see them again for their first time meeting up again. It's a pretty cool thing. That's kind of connective tissue there. So this episode ends. This is before we know anything about the rest of Rebels or Mandalorian hasn't come out, right? But Ahsoka says she's not going to leave Anakin, and she doesn't. And basically, the episode ends very kind of somewhat ambiguously. Vader ends up walking out of the rubble all messed up as hell. And then there's a shot of Ahsoka walking into like a temple area, like an entrance.
Yeah.
And you don't see her face or anything like that. You just see the back of her head just fade into the temple. And at that point in time, hashtag Ahsoka lives was a thing. And, we didn't know, did that mean Ahsoka actually died? Because we just had, because it wasn't, you didn't see her die, but you assumed because Vader walked out of there, right? And we all knew Vader was going to walk out of there, obviously. We just didn't know how it was going to go down. And it very much ends kind of in a very... It is supposed to be a somber ending because the characters themselves, Ezra, Kanan, all them, Ahsoka is gone. Ahsoka is gone now. Like, they saw this huge-ass explosion, right? She's gone. And they're all very, distraught about it. And also, Kanan's blind now. And so...
yeah, I knew he would be blind. I didn't know that Maul was the one.
Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kanan got blinded by Maul, and he got mauled for sure. And
not Darth Maul, just Maul.
Just Maul, yeah. What did you? I mean, so like knowing what you know now, though, Ahsoka lives on. But what did you think about this ending and how they wrapped up kind of like Ahsoka with the season 2 finale?
Yeah, no, it was like a good like cliffhanger-ish of like an ending, and the way that they like reveal in like the next episode we're going to talk about like how she gets out of there is pretty cool.
But I think so. Let's just jump right into a world between worlds, because Ezra pulls Ahsoka out of that moment, which basically confirms to me, this is how I interpret it, that Ahsoka in fact did die, that Vader killed her right there. It could, because if Ezra didn't pull her out, because she was trying to crack the ground with her sabers, and at that point in time, Vader cuts her down, and so she's dead, right? And then he falls, whatever, and then the explosion happens, and he comes out from the rubble, right? So to me, when I look back at Twilight of the Apprentice Part 2, I go, Ahsoka actually dies there. She dies. However, this is jumping way to the end of this episode, though, real quick, because, and I'm glad I watched these back to back, because I never put this together. I know probably other people have, and it's probably been said elsewhere. But the shot of Ahsoka walking in Twilight of the Apprentice Part 2, her walking in, fading into that temple, right at the end of that episode, you see that in A World Between Worlds, and I'm like, damn, Filoni, you're good. He's real good.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw it that like quite that way. Like, I don't, in my opinion, like I didn't think that like she ever actually died. It was like Ezra always pulled her out of that moment. He just didn't know until like he actually did it.
Right.
And it was just like one of those like
one of those Back to the Future type of things,
time loop things, which is like one of the reasons also why he couldn't like save Kanan. Not only the fact that like Ahsoka rightfully was like, if you pull him out, you all die. And then he was like, you don't know what you're asking me to do. And she's like, did you not just hear me? You would die. You wouldn't even be here. Like, I'm asking you to not kill yourself and then create some sort of weird, like, kill your grandfather paradox thing. So just, like, don't do that.
Well, but I think that speaks to the fact that she couldn't save Anakin. She could never save Anakin. The same way that Ezra can never save Kanan. Like, Ahsoka, could Ahsoka use the world between worlds? Which I think this is where I think this might play into something in the Ahsoka series, is that in the world between worlds, could Ahsoka go and grab Anakin out of the moment when he cuts down Mace Windu, when he pledges allegiance to, Palpatine's teachings? Like, if she pulls him out of that moment, she could save him. She could stop that from happening. And she knows she cannot do that. She knows she can't do that. She knows that she cannot save Anakin in the same way that Ezra cannot save Kanan, because that stuff has had to happen. Because you pull that stuff out of the moment, then what if Palpatine then still takes down, Mace Windu or what? Who knows, right? So a lot of unnecessary, or not unnecessary, unforeseen, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Unintended consequences. That's what I'm looking for.
They have like a Back to the Future 2 type of thing where they go back to the future, and there's like, they find out that because Anakin didn't turn to the dark side, that is actually Yar-El Poof that becomes Palpatine's new apprentice. And there's like statues of him like all throughout the galaxy.
And then Palpatine turns the Senate into Palp's Hotel and Casino, and just but man,
my new apprentice Darth Yar-El Poof had this great idea. Slot machines everywhere.
Slot machines. The world between worlds, though, is a really, really interesting concept in Star Wars that I never would have thought of in a million years would be something that we would see in Star Wars. This was like really, really fascinating. Did you pick up on like a lot of the voices and kind of the little, when Ezra steps into World Between Worlds? Did you pick up on a lot of like there's like moments from all their episodes of the show and Clone Wars, Rebels, and the movies? What was that like?
Yeah, like I had the subtitles on, so I think I caught everything. But yeah, no, I was like, I was surprised to like hear Rey and Maz Kanata in that scene. That was pretty cool.
Which is crazy because that's like
everything together.
60 years like in the future, man.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy, So that's really cool way to really. It is like a nexus of Star Wars timeline or lore or whatever. But it was really cool to see. I had the subtitles on too, and I was like, "Oh man, I didn't even realize you could hear Maz in this thing." I was like, "Interesting."
Yeah, and other than that, there's just like a lot of like Yoda and like Obi-Wan, like both from the show, but like also from like the original trilogy. Like talking to Luke, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And then we, while we're in the world between worlds,
which also would be the future, I think.
Yeah, and what's funny is that Ahsoka just names it. She's like, "This is like," almost as if she looked at the camera and goes, "This is like a world between worlds." Kind of the same way. I was thinking about this earlier this week. I was like, Yoda just flat out names the war the Clone Wars. Like, he's like, begun the Clone Wars have. And it's like, wait.
That's going to stick.
We put that on a t-shirt. Put that in a lunchbox.
Yeah.
Slapping it. We're printing it. He does the whole Ian Malcolm speech. We're printing it. We're
Obi-Wan and Mace Windu turn to each other. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's pretty, and it'll stick. But you know what's funny too?
I was gonna call it the Droid Wars.
Yeah, I mean, because we're not like when you have like the title of the Clone Wars, like World War I, World War II. It's the world is at war, right? We get it. They happened once and happened twice. We get it. The Vietnam War. It's happening in Vietnam. There's the war. Korean War happens in Korea. Like we get it. The Clone Wars. It's not even, the war's not even about clones. They're just soldiers in this war.
Because in the original trilogy, it's the Galactic Civil War, but so is this. It should have been Galactic Civil War 1 and 2.
Right, there you go. The GWC 1 and GWC 2. I'm sorry, Yoda. You don't get to name a war, because you bring in a bunch of clones to Geonosis, and like
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, because you saved the day, you feel like you can just name the war. Like, anyway, sorry for that tangent, folks, but
Yeah, good thing he wasn't in charge later on, because he could have been like, "Begun the Andor Wars." Has.
the Endor. The Endor Wars. Oh my gosh. That would have made sense, though. That would have made sense. I'm not going to lie. Anyways. World Between Worlds. They see the Emperor at this point, which brings me to one of our questions,
Yeah.
actually, we got from Maddie Gunner. And I'm curious on your thoughts on this, Brandon. He asks, why do you think Palps couldn't go into the World Between Worlds? Couldn't fit through the door, But why do you think like Palpatine couldn't? He could see into it. Obviously, he could see Ezra and Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
But why do you think he couldn't go through? Basically,
I don't know. Like, there could be like a lot of reasons. Like, maybe you need to go through like that specific portal that Ezra like went through, or but what I think like the real answer would be is that like I said, I think it's like all like paradoxical. Like, Ezra was always meant to pull Ahsoka out of that moment, and so like you can't mess with time. Whatever happened happened. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. So like Palpatine can't go in there, because if he did, he would like mess up the past and the future, and he would change a whole bunch of stuff, just like in the Lego like holiday special.
it's right.
um
Yeah,
yeah, so like you can't have that, because that just like breaks like space time. And I thought like something like this is like handled like really well in my favorite TV show, Lost, where it's like whatever happened. Like, Ezra pulled Ahsoka out of that moment. That's what happened. That's what was always going to happen. And he was always meant to go into the World Between Worlds. And so like Palpatine was never meant to do anything. He was never meant to change anything. So he never will. He just can't, because time. I don't know.
interesting. Yeah, I think the will of the Force, I think, is something to pay attention to in terms of
Mhm.
Ezra pulling Ahsoka out. I fully believe that was the will of the Force. That the will of the Force had something bigger in plan, something bigger planned for Ahsoka, something bigger planned for Ezra. Right? They were going to be needed at other times in the galaxy, because as strong as the Force is, it can't control everything. Which is why I think Palpatine was able to see through what I'm guessing is like some sort of Sith magic, because he was like near like a kind of like a cauldron of sort thing, whatever.
Yeah, he was like,
And-
yeah.
yeah.
He was like shooting fire out of his hands. I don't know
Yeah,
what was going on.
right. See, that was able to enter the World Between Worlds, but he physically could
And
not.
then
His
yeah,
hands
the
started
fire
coming
could,
out.
yeah, the fire could like grab Ezra.
Yeah, right. And so I think it was some sort of like Sith magic.
Mhm.
This actually might have been explained somewhere else. Maybe we're, talking about it for, out of our ass right now. But my whole, at least, headcanon of it all is that it was some sort of Sith magic, and that he needed some sort of tether to enter that world, the world between worlds, and that would have been either Ezra or Ahsoka, which is interesting, because it's like, how would, I don't know. I mean, like, when you see something, I don't know. It's just like one of those things, mystical, magical, all
Mhm.
that type of thing, and will of the Force and all that comes into play, I think. But I feel like if Palpatine was able to hold on to Ezra, that he could have entered that world between worlds, and obviously that would have been bad news for you would have had a Biff Tannen situation on your hands for sure.
Yeah.
And Ahsoka, I think, clearly recognized that, and was like, we gotta boom, and so that whole sequence was really, really interesting. But this world between worlds, and it's kind of already from the jump, when we saw like the first images or the trailer for the Ahsoka series, was when she's fighting Baylan Skoll. It's like, is that the world between worlds? Is that gonna be part of the show? Is that gonna play a part? Even like the logo has some like similar looking type of language that that you find in World Between Worlds. So who knows if that ends up being a thing in the Ahsoka series? But I also do wonder, like, because Ahsoka knows about the world between worlds, is there a point in her journey where she's trying to find another way into that because she wants to, find out more about that, and perhaps alter something, I don't know. It'd be really interesting to see if that does play a part in the show. I won't be disappointed. I might be a little like, how come we didn't pick up on that little thread? Like, we just one time with the world between worlds. I don't know. Do you think we'll see it in the Ahsoka series? Would it make sense to see? Do you think it would make sense in the series?
Possibly, because right, like that like owl that like follows
More,
her
yeah.
around. Clearly, it's got something to do with it. That one guy who works for the Empire was like saying that the owl thingy either works for the daughter or like is the daughter in
Yeah.
like a different form. So that was like an interesting like concept, and we do see it in Mandalorian season 2, I believe, when Ahsoka
Yeah.
first shows up. It's like up in the trees with her.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like she maybe is still like destined to have something to do with the world between worlds.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Did you watch the Mortis arc?
I've seen clips on
Okay.
YouTube.
Yeah, it is a wacky arc.
Yeah.
Talking about some weird stuff, man. And it's kind of funny too because they kind of erase it by the fact that Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Anakin, they enter this plane of the Force, or whatever. All this stuff happens to them, and then they like escape, they get away, and then all of a sudden they're like on this ship, and they're like, "What happened?" They're like, "I don't know," because like Anakin finds out that he's going to become Darth Vader on Mortis, and but he doesn't. But no one remembers anything after they leave. It's wacky, wacky stuff. I do like to revisit from time to time just to be like, what were they thinking? What this is wild, but it comes back to the daughter, and the Morai that thing. So the owl, so it's really interesting to see. I hope, yeah. I don't know if we'll get more explanation or if there needs to be any more explanation on that aspect. I'm not sure. Okay, any last thoughts on this World Between Worlds episode? Anything, or at least for any episode? Because we do have
I don't know.
a couple more questions here.
I think I touched on everything.
Yeah.
That I thought.
We do have one more question in regards to Rebels. That comes from Loidus Maximus, and he asks. Let's see here. Okay, he asks. Clearly, in Rebels, once Fulcrum was mentioned, they were building it up to be a big reveal of a potentially new or returning heavy hitter. Did you ever suspect that it was going to be Ahsoka? If so, what brought you to that conclusion? And if not, did you have any theories, wild or otherwise, at the time as to who Fulcrum could be? When I was watching Rebels, I did not watch it in real time, like when it was airing. It wasn't until like I think it might have been season 3, when I was like, once I found out about like the Ahsoka Vader stuff, and I was like, wait, what's going on? I gotta check this out. And this was like after season 2 had aired, I believe. So I think I got interested in Rebels at that point. I was like, oh, Vader showed up a couple times in this series. That's interesting. Oh, Ahsoka's now here, and so I did check it out. And so like watching the series, I knew Ahsoka eventually was going to show up. I didn't know how, but even when they were talking about like the Fulcrum thing, I never even thought about Ahsoka. I didn't even have a thought about who it could be, to be honest with you. And even like the reveal of her as Fulcrum isn't like some big grandiose thing like, ta-da, it's Ahsoka. And she just comes like coming down the ladder, and the ghost is like, hey, I'm here, basically. And it's just like, oh, okay, cool, you're a Fulcrum, all right, whatever. And it wasn't like a huge like reveal. They didn't make it to be a huge reveal, but it is a pretty cool thing that Ahsoka is Fulcrum. Brandon, did you get to that part in Rebels where like Ahsoka's revealed to be Fulcrum in Rebels?
No, I haven't seen that part. So yeah, I've like kind of like just always like known, I guess, from like talking to people
Yeah.
that that connection existed.
Yeah, and then the other part of the question is, did you have any theories while, like, who could be? Yeah, so like, would have been interesting if, because I think even Ezra asks or says, is Fulcrum Saw, and I think they kind of like pushed that off. They're like,
Hmm.
no, it's not Saw. Um, I don't know, like who else it really could, like maybe like a Lando because like, but because he does become involved later on, but I don't know who else could have been Fulcrum.
Hmm.
Like that would have been like that would have made more sense, but I don't know. I guess I just can't see it any other way now, knowing that it's always been Ahsoka. I guess. Um, okay,
Yeah.
so before we wrap up this episode, we have one more question. One more, Brandon, here, and it comes from Erdan 2.5. I know you submitted it last week, Erdan, but we had already recorded the episode by the time you submitted, so thanks for popping it back in our Discord channel. Yeah, if you wanted to leave us a question, you can always leave it in our Discord channel, or you could leave it in a comment on our YouTube channel or on any video. And can't guarantee that we'll see it, but we for sure will in our Discord. And Erdan 2.5 asks, when Palpatine returned in Rise of Skywalker, did he completely abandon his Palpatine name and fully took on the title Darth Sidious, maybe Emperor Sidious? Do you recall, Brandon?
I mean, they refer to him as Palpatine like a bit too much. I think it's said so many times.
That's true.
Palpatine, 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 Palpatine. I don't know. I think like I don't know. I think he just like sees himself as the Emperor. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he cares too much about anything else. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
think we only ever hear Darth Sidious, I think, said in the sequel trilogy once, and Luke says it in The Last Jedi.
yeah. Which is really weird, right? Like, because
Yeah.
also I don't know that the galaxy at large would know him as Darth Sidious.
Yeah.
They obviously would know him as Palpatine, like, and that's why
Then they
Poe
would have had to
says,
do, yeah, they would have had to do some dumb joke, be like, Darth Sidious, spit on the nose, don't you think? Yeah.
right, right.
Hmm.
Um, all right, so thanks for submitting those questions, everyone. And remember to leave a comment, reply to a comment, engage in conversation. We've been checking those out a day or two after the episode is after this has gone up and everything, just to check in on and see what's going on and respond to your comments. And we really do love reading them. And also thanks to the people that have sent emails. Those are really cool to read. And again, those are 5 entry points or 5 entries into our drawing for the Ahsoka Black Series, whether it's the Rebels version or Mandalorian version of that figure. Yeah. So next week, though, we have 2 more episodes to talk about before we wrap up this series. And we're talking about The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 5, which is Chapter 13, titled The Jedi, and The Book of Boba Fett, Season 1, Episode 6, Chapter 6, From the Desert Comes a Stranger. And we'll be talking about both of those episodes next week. And then the week after that, so the week before, so the 17th, August 17th, we'll be doing a kind of like an Ahsoka series preview, if you will, kind of everything we've gathered from the trailers and the things, articles that have come out, information. I will have some visual treats for you from when we were at San Diego Comic-Con. Myself and Kevin, we were down at the Star Wars booth, and we got some pictures from over there about some of the props that were used in Ahsoka. So I'm gonna put those on the episode. So in 2 weeks, that'll happen. That episode will be in 2 weeks. Got some cool. Actually, I think you can see on our Twitter, or is it X? What do we? I don't. Who knows what it's called?
I don't know. I'm over it. Find me on Threads.
Find Brandon on Threads. We did post a video of Sabine's lightsaber, and it was titled Sabine's lightsaber. I got a really cool 360 video of it if you want to go check it out. Very cool video. Otherwise, in 2 weeks, you'll see it on that episode. You'll see all the pictures we took from that booth. So that's in 2 weeks. Next week, again, the Mandalorian episode, the Jedi, Book of Boba Fett episode, From the Desert Comes a Stranger. We're talking about those 2 episodes to wrap up our essential Ahsoka episodes as we get ready for the Ahsoka series on Disney+. 2-episode premiere, August 23rd. I'm really looking forward to it. Brandon, do you have any final words for the good people out there?
Always, the Force will be with you. Always.
Well said.
Scoundrel. Scoundrel. I like the sound of that.